In this video, we're going to cover some of the new tools, techniques, and resources available to you in Mobile Entree 4. Let's open up the development environment and jump right in. So the development environment for Mobile Entree is the exact same as it is for SharePoint 2010. A server or Windows 7 machine running SharePoint 2010 as well as Visual Studio 2010. The first thing that you want to make sure is that you have Mobile Entree installed and configured properly on your server. Then you'll want to download the Mobile Entree Visual Studio extensions and install those as well. It's a very simple install. Then we can open up Visual Studio. So the starting point for development in Mobile Entree is just a blank SharePoint solution. So we'll just start an empty SharePoint project, give it a name, and we'll go ahead. We want to make sure we deploy this as a farm solution, as it is including libraries that are not allowed in sandbox solutions. Now that we have our blank SharePoint solution, we can start to add Mobile Entree components to it. If you right-click the project and click Add, New Item, the Visual Studio extensions that you just installed will allow you to add an action provider, a Mobile Entree application, or a Mobile Entree theme. Let's go ahead and start with the Mobile Entree application, as that's probably the most straightforward. Adding this item type to your project is going to create a custom folder that is attached to our event receiver, the Mobile Entree event receiver, so that when this is deployed and activated within the feature, it will be recognized by Mobile Entree as a mobile application. So what you can see, some of the things that automatically happen is the folder is created, the application class is created, and now we have this new folder called plugin path, which allows you to put custom CSS, custom JavaScript, your own custom user agent mapping and list style files, all just for this application. All of these things will be automatically provisioned and associated with this application. If we go ahead and take a look at our feature, you'll see that the feature automatically had that app added to it. So when this feature is activated, the app will be registered with Mobile Entree. This can be scoped at the web or the site collection level, and you can add multiple items to a single feature. So just taking a look at our application, if you're familiar with developing Mobile Entree apps in the past, it's very much the same. You have a query list method that you fill out for your application. So I'm just going to put something very quick. So now, when I deploy this, just like you would any other SharePoint solution, I can now browse to my site and my Mobile Entree configuration, and the application that we just created will be available to provision. So if I click on New Mobile Application Instance, we will see that my ME4 Test App 1, I can create an instance of it and it'll show up for my users. Let's take a look at another type. So something new in Mobile Entree 4 is the action tray and the ability to provide custom actions based on context. Those are provided through an item type called an action provider. So we'll go ahead and create a new Mobile Entree action called Test Action 1. And you'll see that it gets a similar structure as the app. So an action can have its own list style, CSS file, JavaScript file, and user agent mapping file. And it also gets a class file that defines the action. So taking a look at an action, there's really kind of two methods that are really important to the action. There's query scope and there's query list. Query scope gets called every time a page is loaded and your action is registered, the scope of that page will get sent inside the action scope object, and then you can render your action accordingly. So this allows you to see that the scope of the request is a list item within a particular list. If your action is meant to provide a button to do something with that item within that list, you can provide that button inside query scope. Additionally, items added within query scope can be given click actions, which will then be applied, and they will call the query list of your action provider when that click action is clicked. So I have some sample code just to paste in here. I'm going to grab it really quick. Alright, so this sample is just going to check to see if the scope of the request is an edit or add screen, and if it is not, then it's going to render links to subsites within the action tray. So if you take a look, the first thing we do is define a string, which is the scope type variable. We check to see if it does not contain the string edit or add. If it does not, we make a reference to our SP web object within the current context. We create a new action lane with an action lane identifier. This identifier, as long as you make it unique, it will create your own lane. Then we give that lane a sequence. In this case, we want these navigation items to show up above any other items. And we give it a lane style. We want our action lane to be text only. Then I just define an iterator here, and you'll see what that's for, or just an integer that we're using for sequencing. Then we do a for each subwebs on the web, and create an action item, give it a title, give it an ID, and then we create a go-to click action. And you can see here this is a new syntax for being able to create click actions. And we give the go-to URL, the URL of the web, the subweb. Then we add that action to the lane. Then we initialize the action lane's output here, from here. And we add our lane. Simple as that. This action provider is going to provide a lane with all subwebs within it. So one thing you'll note in the features, in the feature that I have now, both the test app and the test action are included in one feature. They don't have to be. You can create multiple features and include these items within different features, but by default they will add to a single feature. So let's go ahead and deploy and see this action in action. I'm going to bring up my iPad here, and we'll go ahead and refresh this to load in our new action. So now you notice the action tray item, or action tray opening button shows up on our home bar. When I tap that, it shows all of the subsites within the action tray. I can click on one and it'll take me there. Very simple. It's a very cool place to start doing some new integrations. This is a very simple example, and our SDK, which I'm going to be going through in a little bit, has some more complex actions that you can provide. But this is a good starting point in what it can do and how it can work. So let's take a look at the last item type that we can add to our SharePoint solution. So again, just right-clicking our project, going to the Add menu, Add New Item, and we're going to add a theme. Now, for those of you familiar, again, with the Mobile Entree themes, it's very similar as it has been in the past, although just kind of more automatic, less code, or at least .NET code, and we give you some more integration points with client-side scripting. So within the theme, you'll see we default by adding a user agent mapping file, a custom script JavaScript file, and a CSS file, which is blank. If we take a look at this custom script JavaScript file, you'll notice that it registers, or at least it outlines a number of methods that you can add functionality to. So things like init, which happens right after the core ME object is defined on the client, on resize, on before click, on before panel rendered, on after panel rendered, etc. So we give you a bunch of different events that you can attach to and put custom client code in. Now, one good example for this is UI augmentation. So let's just say, for example, I wanted to, within my site, my SharePoint site, I wanted a user to be able to see a custom checkbox. Instead of the default checkbox here, I want them to see a more iOS-like toggle. So doing something like that, the easiest way to do that is post-rendering. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach to the after panel rendered function. So you can delete all of the methods that you're not going to use. And just focus on this one. First thing I'm going to do is, like with the action, I have some sample code and a couple of files that I need to add to the solution, so I'm going to do that really quick. Alright, so here's what I added. I added a couple of images that are required for the JavaScript library that we're going to use. I have a JavaScript library called jQuery.checkbox.js, which will be included in this sample. And then I also modified our style sheet to include the styles that are required for this jQuery checkbox UI element. Then I need to go into my custom script and I need to add the initialization of those checkbox items. So I have some more code that I can just paste in here. It's basically very simple. I just look for any checkbox or radio button, call the checkbox method with my custom empty image location, which references this one. One other thing that has to be done is in the user agent mapping file, we have to reference the jQuery checkbox JavaScript file. Let's deploy this, see if it works. Go ahead and refresh the page. Go into our task, create a new task, and we'll see that those checkboxes are now replaced with toggles. So you can see it's a very simple way to augment the UI within both out-of-the-box and custom applications. And the next thing we'll go over is the Sdk Sample Solution that has a few different projects and a number of new development concepts in it that we'll go over.